Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. The next talk in this collection, this is chapter 5, it's called Everything That Arises Passes Away. And this is also from the Dhamma talks given in the winter retreat in 1988. The Buddha said, the origin of all suffering was ignorance. So it's important to consider what he really meant by ignorance, quote unquote. Most human beings in the world live very much as if their habits, thoughts, feelings and memories are what they really are. They do not take the time to look at their lives, or don't really have the opportunity to watch and consider how these conditions operate. What is a condition? The body that we have, emotions and feelings, the perceptions of the mind, conceptions and consciousness through the senses, these are conditions. A condition is something that is added, compounded, something that arises and passes away. It's not the uncreated, unborn, unoriginated, ultimate reality. Religion is what human beings use to try to get back to their ultimate realization of reality beyond the cycles of birth and death. The supramundane wisdom, or Lokuttara Panya, and Nirvana, or Nibbana, is the experience of this transcendent reality. This is when we suddenly know the truth, not by studying the Pali scriptures or a Zen book, but through direct experience. So the word condition here, he's using that as a translation for sankhara, and so this is one of those sort of Buddhist jargon words that we get very used to using here in a monastery, but in ordinary everyday circumstances isn't used so much, or not particularly used in this way. And so when you come into a monastery, you start going on to retreats, and people talk about conditions, or this condition and that condition. Can be a bit puzzling. It certainly was for me way back in the beginning of my time. But this is what it's referring to. So it's a English translation for sankhara, and that literally means something that is put together, something that is formed, something that is compounded. And also, when as the talk proceeds, Luang Por also explains a bit more what we mean by ignorance. But just to start off with, just like the word condition has a particular origin or meaning in Buddhist terms, then ignorance is it's not being unaware of particular information. Often that's the way we use the word in English, to say that I'm ignorant of something is like I don't know how to do it, or I'm not familiar with the story behind something or the way that something works. Rather, the avijja literally means not knowing or not being aware. Another English word is nescience, so the word science with N-E in front of it. Oh, by the way, I spelled synderesis wrong the other day. It was the last four letters are E-S-I-S, not I-S-I-S, just in case anyone looked it up. So ignorance is not a matter of not having information, but it's a quality of not seeing clearly, or unawareness, a lack of the quality of knowing itself. We generally conceive the truth as being a thing, Nibbana as being some peaceful state of mind or some kind of ecstatic experience. All of us have experienced some kind of happiness, so we like to conceive the unborn, uncreated, unoriginated as a happy experience. But the Buddha was very careful never to describe the ultimate reality or nibbana. He never said very much about it. People want to know what it is. They write books on it, speculate about its nature. But this is exactly what the Buddha didn't do. Instead, he pointed to direct knowing of conditions that change, what we can know through our own experience at this moment. This is not a matter of believing anyone else. It's a matter of knowing at this present moment that whatever arises passes away. So we put forth that kind of attention in our lives. We're attentive and notice that whatever arises passes away. Every condition of your mind or body, whether it's a sensation or of pleasure or of pain, feeling or memory, sight, sound, smell, taste or touch, inside or outside, it's just a condition. So even though the point that Luang Por is making here about people want to write books about it, so is the latest edition of the Island, which is a book about Nibbana that myself and Luang Por Sumedho put together. One of the reasons why we put that together was because the Buddha does speak very, very rarely about ultimate reality, about Nibbana and such like, but we thought it would be a useful thing to gather together the few references and say sources from around the Pali Canon and within the forest tradition in particular, where it is talked about, and to give a bit of a sort of background information or as clear information as possible as to what the Buddha did say. The majority of the teachings, as people are probably aware, is based upon the pathway to realizing Nibbana or realizing ultimate truth, and that I would say 99% of the Buddha's teaching is directly related to that. It's talking about the path to that realization, the way in which that realization can be actualized, rather than trying to talk about the nature of the goal and going into complex sort of metaphysical descriptions or poetic descriptions of that quality, but rather spending most of his attention, most of his time on talking about what's obstructing the realization of that, the way to the realization of that, and the sort of practical methods that we can use in our lives to bring about that realization as a genuine quality, rather than just as an idea in the mind. The phrase that Luang Por uses here, and is the title of this talk, "Everything that arises passes away," and he repeats a couple of times in this paragraph, is one of the ways that stream entry is characterized in the suttas quite regularly, is when someone has that say first level or layer of insight is fully established, then what they realize, or what is known, can be described as seeing that all that arises passes away. Yankinchi samudaya dhammang sabantang nirodha dhammanti. Whatever is subject to arising is also subject to cessation. And so that in this same era and earlier in the early days of Chithurst, one of the ways that Luang Por liked to teach was around this very phrase, and he would say, what is it that Buddhas know that unenlightened beings don't know? With the idea that, or the assumption that you'd assume that what Buddhas know is a kind of vast range of cosmically significant and esoteric knowledge or understanding of the workings of karma and the fabric of the material and mental spiritual universe. What is it that Buddhas know that unenlightened beings don't know? And assuming it's something sort of fantastic and strange and esoteric, and then he would pause for a moment and then say, what Buddhas know is that all that arises passes away and is not self. And to our thinking mind, it's like, well, so what? That's nothing. That's no big thing. That's not news. What goes up must come down is something you learned about when you were 3 or 4 years old. It's not a unique piece of information. But what he points to here and throughout this Dhamma talk is that it's the mind that really sees that and knows that the attitude of mind is like a different a different way of attending. It's a different way, and it's a different attitude, a different cast of mind, so that it's looking at the world of things, external and internal, physical and mental, looking at the whole field of experience in a radically different way. You're looking at the changing and unstable nature, the uncertain and empty nature of all experience, rather than dwelling upon the content of experience, and that that way of seeing that's characterized by that phrase, Yankinchi samudaya dhammang sabantang nirodha dhammanti, that's representing as a simple phrase the change of attitude, so that rather than whether you like it or you don't like it, it's changing. Whether it's inside or outside, it's changing. Whether it's coarse or refined, it's changing. If it's pleasant and you want to hold on to it and you cherish it and you take it to be yours, it's changing. It can't be owned. It can't be kept. It can't sustain itself. If it's painful and unbearable and a dreadful stress, it's not something that can stay forever. It can't be permanent. It can't be something that is who and what you are. It has to change. It has to pass away, so that very way of seeing, that very attitudinal shift, is something that creates a radically different way of seeing and appreciating the experiential world, and as it's recognized, or it's like that, or it's talked about as that seeing of the deathless. It's like seeing the world of sense perception and conception, seeing it in its context. So seeing the deathless, part of seeing the deathless is seeing the deathbound as deathbound. That the world of change is the world of change, but that's not also seeing that's the recognition that that's not the whole story. It can't be the whole picture. So that the realization of stream entry is also talked about as seeing the deathless. That they're synonymous. So that one way of talking about it is seeing the deathless, the unborn, unoriginated, uncreated, and knowing that and trusting that realization. And then the other is the learning to not trust the realm of the born, the created, the formed, the originated, and seeing that in a different light, so that we're changing our habit from taking refuge in the born, the originated, the created, the formed, what we think of as ourself and the world, as patterns of the experiential field, as a radical letting go of that, no longer seeking identity or depending on an identity based on the sensory experience and memory and ideas and those forms of perception as conditions of mind. But there's a radical letting go, as a non-identification, so that the very first of the obstructions to enlightenment, the very first of the 10 fetters, is Sakkaya Ditthi, self-view. So that's the very first thing to be let go of, that sense of, this is not me, this is not what I am, this is not myself, it's not a self, it doesn't belong to a self. Any thoughts or questions on that? Okay, so to continue. It's important to reflect on what ignorance, quote unquote, really means. In the sense in which the Buddha used it when he called it the origin of all suffering, being ignorant means that we identify with these conditions by regarding them as me or mine, or as something that we don't want to be me or mine. We have the idea that we must find some permanent pleasant condition. We have to achieve something, get something we don't have. But you can notice that desire in your mind is a moving thing, looking for something. So it's a changing condition that arises and passes away. It's not self. The expression, not self, anatta, is not some kind of mantra that you keep repeating to get rid of things, but an actual penetration of the very nature of all desires. As you look carefully, very patiently and humbly, you begin to see that the created arises out of the uncreated and goes back to the uncreated. It disappears and there's nothing left. If it were really you and really yours, it would stay, wouldn't it? If it were really you, where would it go? To some kind of storehouse of personality? But that concept, like whatever you conceive, is a condition that arises and passes away. Whenever you try to conceive yourself or any concept or memory of yourself as this or that, it's only a condition of your mind. It's not what you are. You're not a condition of your mind. So, sorrow, despair, love and happiness are all conditions of mind, and they're all not self. Oh, this is going more directly and deeply into that way of seeing, so that casting the vision around and looking at more and more of what we think of as our experience. And there's particularly as he says, the idea that we must find some kind of permanent pleasant condition, to have to achieve something or get something you don't have. That desire in our mind is a moving thing, looking for something. So that is a changing condition. So the desire that I should be this way, I shouldn't be that way, that is a changing condition. And so when there's a stepping back from that and recognize, oh, that desire to be something, that's arising and passing away. That desire to not be something, that's arising and passing away. Yeah, and every single condition of mind falls into that same pattern. One of the things that we're doing, and even within this, you're recognizing those feelings of self, the feeling of I and mine and me, that those are also conditions of mind that arise and pass away. And it's one of the sort of essential insights is that the feelings of self are not self, that they don't belong to anyone, and they are not anyone. That feeling of I-ness and me-ness and mine-ness, it's another mental condition, a pattern of experience. I think we were talking about it at the one of the last readings, that feeling of self, it has a purpose, it has its place in nature, but that I feeling is another condition that arises and passes away. It's not anything solid or substantial. The phrase that Luang Por uses here, that the created arises out of the uncreated and goes back to the uncreated, that back in those days, in the 80s, then Luang Por used to use that kind of phrase fairly often. And then he, after a time, he stopped using that, since it's not a phrase that you find exactly repeated in the Pali Canon. What you do find is where the Buddha says, all conditions merge in the deathless. That is a phrase that is used. So amatogada is merging with the deathless, or dissolving into the deathless. So that phrase is used, but arising from the uncreated or the unconditioned, the unformed, even though Luang Por would regularly use that as a mode of expression, you don't find that in the Pali Canon as such. And I get the feeling, I don't know directly, now that he lives here, we can add it to the list of things to ask him, but my suspicion is that somebody or some people said that, Venerable Sir, you don't actually find that being said in the Pali Canon, so where do you get that from? And so I think he was speaking from his own experience, and certainly in that era, and my memory of listening to many of his Dhamma teachings and reading his books, that's a phrase that he would use quite regularly. But it's something that he doesn't use anymore, to my knowledge, and I feel that also in terms of observing how the mind works, then just to more simply and directly say, well, things arise and pass away, and that that sense of where they come from or what they're caused by, that can be talked about in different ways. But I think the phraseology, the created arises out of the uncreated, it's good to bear in mind that's not a phrase that you find in Buddha Dhamma. Thoughts, questions? Okay, I'll continue. Notice when you suffer, feel discontent in your life. Why? It's because of some attachment, some idea of yourself or someone else. Someone you love dies, and you feel sorry for yourself. Or you think of and dwell on the good times that you've had with them, creating more conditions of mind. Maybe you feel guilty because you weren't giving or loving all of the time. That's a condition of mind also. You have a memory. You conceive of them as being alive. But that very idea of a person is a perception of mind. It's not a person. Remembering someone who is alive, someone you wish you could be with right now, is a condition of mind. And remembering someone who's died, so that you'll never see them again, is also a condition of mind. Buddhist meditation is a way of looking at the conditions of mind, investigating and seeing what they are, rather than believing in them. People want to believe. When someone close to you has died, someone may tell you, oh, they went up to heaven with God the Father, or they're living in the delights of the two-seater heaven. They say this so that you'll have a pleasant perception of mind. Well, now I know that my grandmother is happy up there in the heavenly realms, dancing with the angels. Then somebody else says, well, you know, she did some pretty dreadful things. She's probably down in hell, burning in the eternal fires. So you start worrying that maybe you'll end up there too. But that's a perception of mind. Heaven and hell are conditioned phenomena. If you reflect back 10 years ago, that's a condition of mind that arises and passes away. And it arises because I just suggested it to you. So that condition is dependent on another condition. Memory is what we've experienced, and the future is the unknown. But who is it that knows the conditions of the moment? I can't find that who. There's only the knowing. And knowing can know anything that is present now, pleasant or unpleasant, speculations about the future or reminiscences of the past, creations of yourself as this or that. You create yourself or the world you live in, so you can't really blame anyone else. If you do, it's because you're still ignorant. We call the one who knows Buddha, but that doesn't mean Buddha, quote unquote, is a condition. This is not saying that a Buddha Rupa knows anything, but rather that Buddha, quote unquote, is the knowing. So Buddhist meditation is really being aware rather than becoming Buddha. The idea of becoming Buddha is based on conditions. You think you're someone who isn't Buddha right now, and in order to become Buddha, you have to read books to find out how to become one. Of course, this means that you have to work really hard to get rid of those qualities which are not Buddha-like. You're far from perfect. You can be angry, greedy, doubtful, and frightened. And of course, Buddhas aren't like that, because Buddha is that which knows, so they know better. In order to become Buddha, you have to get rid of those un-Buddha-like qualities and try to develop Buddha-like qualities, such as compassion. But all these are creations of the mind. We create Buddhas, quote unquote, because we believe in the creations of the mind. But they aren't real Buddhas. They're only false Buddhas. They are not wisdom Buddhas. They're just creations of our mind. As long as you conceive yourself as being somebody who has to do something in order to become something else, you're still caught in a trap, a condition of mind as being a self. And you never quite understand anything properly. No matter how many years you meditate, you'll never really understand the teaching. You'll always be just off the mark. The direct way of seeing things now, that whatever arises passes away, doesn't mean that you're throwing anything away. It means that you're looking as you've never bothered to look before. You're looking from a perspective of what's here now, rather than looking for something that's not here. If you come into the meditation hall thinking, I've got to spend this hour looking for the Buddha, trying to become something, trying to get rid of these bad thoughts, I must sit and practice hard, try to become what I should become. So I'll sit here and try getting rid of things, try to get things, try to hold on to things. With that attitude, meditation is a really strenuous effort and always a failure. But if you're just aware of the conditions of mind, if you see in perspective the desire to become, to get rid of, to do something, or the feeling that you can't do it, or that you're an expert, or whatever, you begin to see that whatever you're experiencing is a changing condition and not self. You're seeing a perspective of being Buddha rather than doing something in order to become Buddha. When we talk about sati, mindfulness, this is what we mean. Again, this is a very important principle and very much a part of the forest tradition approach and languaging of things, and that Luang Por Chah would similarly speak in very comparable ways. That the Buddha that is the refuge is this quality of awareness, the entire language, the puru, the one who knows, or tatru, the element of knowing. And that's the refuge. That a Buddha Rupa is not a refuge, or a Buddha, the Buddha as an idea or as a historical figure, as an idea in the mind, that say, well, those are Buddhas in form or Buddhas in perception. But the Buddha that's the refuge is really this quality of awakened awareness, the mind that knows in this moment. And that's what Luang Por is pointing to right here. That being Buddha is being awake, and that's taking refuge in Buddha is being that wakeful awareness. And so that, and this phrase that he uses here, being somebody who's got to do something now in order to become something else, is still caught in a trap, a condition of mind. And during that era, he would talk regularly about having to make a paradigm shift. I think he borrowed the language from a Fritjof Capra book that was very popular at that time, talking about a paradigm shift, a different way of seeing the world, and that he would talk about having a paradigm shift from I'm a person who's unenlightened, who's got to do something now in order to become enlightened in the future. And that seeing that's the framework that we usually take. That customarily that's sort of an ordinary, inarguable so-called fact. That yes, I am. But Luang Por, I am an unenlightened person, and I have got to do something to become enlightened in the future. And so he would point right at that paradigm, that framework that we would be putting in place. Yes, I am an unenlightened person, starting from that assumption or that kind of self-creation, and say no, you don't have to frame things in that way. Don't put it in that form, but rather there is the Buddha seeing the Dhamma, the awake mind seeing the way things are. So being Buddha here and now. And as he says at the end of that, this is what being mindful really means: is that paying attention in the present moment, being awake, being aware. That is embodying that quality of awakened awareness. And the degree to which that knowing, that mindfulness is free of self-view and is fully developed, then that's the degree to which that awareness, that knowing sees through the habits of judgment around the conditions of me here, you there, I like, I don't like, this is good, that's bad, and so on and so forth. So just within this little section here, there's a lot of very significant teachings. And I thought I would also share with you this particular passage I like to quote, another one of my favorite sutta quotations at the moment. So this is the dialogue of the Buddha with this Brahmin called Dona. And Dona had seen the footprints in the dust along the road of the Buddha, who'd passed by a little bit earlier, and was amazed by the shape and form of the footprints, and seeing these extraordinary lines and marks that were there of wheels and images that were there in the footprints, and thought, wow, these footprints can't have been made by an ordinary person. Then he followed the footprints into the forest, and then found the Buddha sitting under a tree there. And the Brahmin went up to him and asked, "Sir, are you a god?" "No, Brahmin." "Sir, are you a heavenly angel?" "No, Brahmin." "Sir, are you a spirit?" "No, Brahmin." "Sir, are you a human being?" "No, Brahmin." So when the Buddha asked, "Are you a human being?" even though he was born of human parents, he says no. And the Pali for that is Nako ahang brahmana manuso bhavisamiti, which literally means something like, there is not that whereby you can say that I am a human being. You can call me a human being. So then Dona goes on to say, then sir, what indeed are you? The Buddha responds, Brahmin, the defilements by means of which, through my not having abandoned them, I might be a god or a heavenly angel or a spirit or a human being, have been abandoned by me, cut off at the root, made like a palm stump, done away with, and are no more subject to future arising. Just as a blue or red or white lotus is born in water, grows in water, and stands up above the water, untouched by it, so too I, who was born in the world and grew up in the world, have transcended the world, and I live untouched by the world. Remember me as one who is awakened. And the Pali for that is Buddhoti mang brahmana thareti. Hold me as one who is awakened. Buddhoti. And so that I feel is one of the most significant passages in the Pali canon, and it's said to be one of the reasons why we use the word Buddha to refer to the Buddha, and the kind of titles, the ways of say expression that are used to refer to the great teacher, the founder of this religious form, the Buddha, the one who is awake, and also why we say the Buddha, not Buddha as if it was a name, but the Buddha as referring to that quality, and so that if we take that. And I find that it's kind of amazing. The Buddha is incapable of lying. He's totally enlightened. He's an arahant. He cannot tell a lie. And when he's asked, "Are you a human being?" he says, "No." And so but also in that passage, I think I was quoting I've quoted many times. I think I was quoting last night in a Dhamma talk, how where he says, that material form whereby one trying to describe the Tathagata would describe him, material form, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness, that similarly has been cut off at the root, made like a palm stump, and so forth. That the Tathagata is liberated from being reckoned in terms of the five khandhas. That awakened awareness, the Tathagata, that knowing quality. It knows the five khandhas, but it can't be defined in terms of the five khandhas. And so when he's asked, are you a human being? He says, no. that which is here, the Tathagata, can't be defined in terms of the five khandhas, what you think of as a manusa, as a person. So I feel that's one of those passages that's really worth contemplation, and then using that to inform your own practice, the way we develop vipassana meditation, and look at our own life, our own mind, and say, yeah, but I am a woman, I am a man, I am of this. This is my name, this is my nationality, this is how old I am, and that sort of matter of factness with which we feed and strengthen self-view. And it's exactly these teachings that say challenge that, and that sense of being a person, and that kind of personalizing. The very idea of a person is a perception of mind. It's not a person. That. On a worldly level, according to the Sammuti Satya, the conventional truth, we can say, yeah, I am a person, but from the level of the Paramatta Satya, from that level of Dhamma, of reality, as Luang Por says here, that the idea of a person is a perception of mind. It's not a person. And that quality of knowing is, even though it's in a way the very heart of of reality for each and every one of us, it's not personal. It's not something that say we can or the mind can validly talk about as in personal ways. So there's I feel a lot within this Dhamma talk, a lot of essential principles that are really worthy of consideration, and in that say that change of view, I feel it's helpful to see the developing the insight into not self. It's going from this self-centered perspective of I am a person, I'm a human being. This is what I am. It's going from a a self-centered point of view to a Dhamma-centered point of view or nature-centered point of view, saying, yes, so these personal qualities of a body, a mind, a personality, a story, an age, and so on, a name, a gender, a family. Yes, those perceptions are part of the field of experience, but they arise and pass away. That they can't be the whole. They can't be the whole story. They're not the whole reality. And again, a few readings ago, I mentioned how that stream entry is also called the change of lineage. So that change of perspective, going from the self-centered view to the Dhamma-centered view, is seeing that our origin, if you like, is Dhamma itself rather than our biological parents. So on the level of conventional truth, our biological parents are where we've come from, but from the more radical perspective, that's not our genuine lineage. That really the Dhamma itself is the foundation of reality rather than our biological mother and father. So any thoughts, questions? Yes, Venerable Nidaro.
Yes, Ajahn, thank you. I was wondering, to what extent you think that then particular qualities have to be developed in order to, attain stream entry or full enlightenment? Because from what you're saying, it seems like maybe it's not so much about developing particular qualities, and also thinking about the fetters. They seem like the fetters is more a thing of letting go rather than developing something. But then I think, like for example, personally, I have this idea that one needs to be able to remember where one puts things. So practically speaking, like a hat, one wears a hat and then puts it somewhere and then forgets where it was and misplaced it. I have a bit that idea, okay, someone who's really developed on the path, that would never happen because they're always mindful and they know exactly what they're doing and they remember everything they did. And I mean, maybe they don't remember all the facts they've collected over time, but that would never happen. So I see
that's just if I can chime in, that's one of the ways that the Buddha sort of characterizes mindfulness. When he's talking about sati, it's like one who sort of remembers what was said and done long ago, that you're paying attention to what's going on so that you recollect what was done, what was said. It doesn't mean to say that you have to have perfect recall, but that's one of the ways he talks about it, that because of paying attention to things in the present, then the mind easily recalls sort of where you put your hat and so forth. Yes. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah. So exactly along those lines, my feeling would be, okay, it's important in order to develop mindfulness to get liberated, and that would manifest in remember where one puts the hat. So to what extent do you think one needs to actively develop qualities like, for example, mindfulness on the path, rather than maybe not caring too much about that, but just paying attention to what's happening now, and if there's frustration because one forgot where the hat is, just noticing that and working with that, as opposed to developing qualities, for example, like mindfulness or energy or effort and things like that?
Well, there's a few things in there. I think what Luang Por is pointing to there in many ways is not letting the effort that's necessary in spiritual practice to be co-opted by self-view. Like, I am an unenlightened person who's got to do something now to become enlightened in the future. So in that very way of phrasing it, then the mind is putting Dhamma practice into the framework of self-view. So that's into the form of bhavatanha, I am a person. Like that's Sakaya Ditti right there. So the mind is invested in that. So certainly there are the changing of the paradigm, recognizing that there's an unhelpful paradigm in place, point one. Point two, that doesn't have to be fixed, that can be changed, that we can change the way that things are seen. That's also, that needs to be recollected, right? If you follow what I mean. So that's, effort needs to be made, that the mind is being sort of guided by habits of self-view and attachment. and something can be done about that. But that effort of waking up, and rather than me and my problems, or me having to do something now to become enlightened in the future, being awake now, there's a recognition of the sense of things out of balance, and then what needs to be done to work with that, and then also witnessing the effects of reshaping the way things are seen, or changing the perspective, seeing the results of having changed the perspective. So that's all part of effort that's being made, right? But that effort is what I would call is effort that's free of self-view, so that there is effort being applied in the practice, and that's Samma Vayama. It's an effort that is in tune with Dhamma. So maybe one of the things that's useful to be aware of, and in the chapters done by Luang Por Sumedho in that book, The Island, there's I think 4 chapters about stream entry, and in that there's I found particularly helpful. He talks about the Buddha's categorization of the qualities that are supportive of stream entry, and there is one of the many lists. So that the 4 qualities supportive of stream entry are, first of all, sapurisa sangseva, that's drawing close to good people. Then sadhamma savana, listening to the good Dhamma, listening to true Dhamma. Yoniso manasikara is the 3rd one, so wise reflection. And then the 4th one is Dhammanudhamma patipati, so practicing Dhamma in accordance with Dhamma. So those, so I feel that that's a very helpful set of qualities to bear in mind. But if those are applied, particularly with number 4 in mind, like rather than I am an unenlightened person, I want to become a stream enterer, I've got to do this in order to get that, then that's practicing Dhamma in accordance with self-view. That's practicing Dhamma based on my desire to get something and to be different from the way I am now. So practicing Dhamma in accordance with Dhamma, Dhammanudhamma patipati, is, I would say, that's developing the skill of working with the present moment experience free of self-view, with the practice guided by mindfulness and wisdom, rather than bhavatanha and vibhavatanha, the desire to become, the desire to get rid of. And I talk about this a lot because it's such a crucial thing, because people, the kind of people who gather together to live a monastic life for years and years, decades, or come to spend even a few weeks or a few months here in a monastery like this, people are very sincere. We're here to work on our minds, our lives. We're not just sort of parked here, for random purposes. We're here for a particular cause, for a particular with a particular intention and work that we recognize needs to be done. So there's sincerity and there's commitment. There's people are here to work and to do what's necessary to make life better. But then that sincerity and that commitment, that effort, then can so easily be co-opted by, I shouldn't be this way, I should be that way. I'm a confused person, I'm an unenlightened person, I'm an anxious person, or I'm a selfish person. I've got to get rid of that selfishness, that anxiety, and I've got to become better, I've got to become enlightened, I've got to get rid of these obstructive things, I've got to develop these good things, and then I will be that enlightened person in the future. And so that sincerity and that effort, that commitment is being taken over by bhavatanha vibhavatanha, the desire to become, the desire to get rid of. And so it's very tragic that we can put years, decades of work into practicing Dhamma based on self-view. And so that, as Luang Por puts it in this, it's a sort of one of those inconvenient truths that no matter how many years you meditate, you'll never really understand the teaching. You'll always be just off the mark. it's a painful truth, that we can, with great sincerity and commitment, continue to practice based on, I am this way, I shouldn't be this way, I want to be that way, I should be another way. And over and over again, we're basing the practice on avijja, on ignorance and self-view, and so that it's not just ironic, it's tragic that we can be sort of missing the mark by that small degree. But essentially, it's like if you're threading a nut on a bolt. If the nut is what they call cross-threaded, that it's going across the thread, so that you can turn it just about, but the more you turn it, the harder it gets, and it's not turning in a true way. And the harder you turn it, the more stuck it gets. So if we're practicing based on self-view and ignorance, then even though we're really trying to get it right, we're trying hard. We create the causes for suffering. Right there, we're creating the causes for dukkha. So that I think that getting the feeling for how effort can be applied based on mindfulness and wisdom, on satipanya, that our decision-making, our effort, the directionality for our life, the work that we do, if that's based on mindfulness and wisdom, then it's in tune with Dhamma. If it's free of, the more it's free from conceit and self-view, and then the more that what guides effort and then decision-making, do this, don't do that, this is wholesome, that's unwholesome, the more that's based and is guided, driven by mindfulness and wisdom, then we can make a lot of effort. We can put a great deal of say time and energy into working with this mind, this life, but it's not stressful, and the result is nibbana rather than more dukkha. Does that make sense? So to me, that's really the crucial thing. And then having like a set of criteria, like those 4 conditions supportive of stream entry, I think it's very, very helpful. I mean, I think just coming to live at Amaravati, living in a Buddhist monastery, your sort of sapurisa sangseva is kind of a given. Like you're drawing close to good people. That that might sound like a conceited view, like we're the best. But there are many, many ways that human beings can choose to spend their time and who they live with and what they do with their days. I mean, there's a big variety. And choosing to gather together with people who are non-violent, who are honest, who are celibate, who are devoted to a fewness of needs and trying to get on with each other, that's pretty amazing. I think that comes pretty close to the sapurisa category. Like the kind of people that you're drawing close to and living with is, you can't get much more sort of well-intentioned and self-disciplined than that, I would say. Yeah. That might be a deluded and conceited view, but I think that sapurisa, a good person or a well-rounded, good-hearted people, they're the kind of, certainly in the West, the kind of people that gather around a monastery are very noble-hearted, sincere, dedicated people who really are trying to live in a very skillful and wise and harmless and honest way. So then, sadhamma savana, living with good people and having that around, then okay, what do you put your attention on? What kind of teachings, what kind of understanding do you dwell on? What sort of knowledge, conceptual knowledge, information do you take in? So sadhamma, the true Dhamma, or that which is in accordance with reality. So that's what that is pointing to. So what do we put our attention on to? What kind of concepts and ideas, words do we dwell upon? Do we take to heart? Listening to the true Dhamma. Yoniso manasikara is wise reflection. Okay, is this working? Is this not working? What would be of more benefit? What's the result of what I'm doing? That kind of investigative reflective, looking at, oh, I'm feeling really tired and grumpy today, or everything looks rosy and beautiful today. Look at that. Or maybe it's because the sun is out. Suddenly everything is right with the world. Oh, look at that. So wise reflection, yoniso manasikara, is extremely important, as you know, particularly in the teachings of Luang Por Sumedho, that's a very strongly emphasized quality. But in a way, I feel that the fourth one, Dhamma Dhamma Patipada, that's kind of the most important in some ways. It's in a way the most subtle of them, but usually the most, many of the Buddha's lists, the most subtle but the most important things are often at the end of the list. I wouldn't be categorical about that, but because, as I was saying earlier, it's defining the whole way that we relate to what we're doing and why we're doing it, the whole sort of source of effort. And so to make that effort really worthwhile, to make sure that the bolt is sitting true, that the nut is sitting true on the bolt, so that it's going to run freely, and you can tighten up the nut and untighten the nut as you wish. That getting that alignment, that's so crucial, and particularly because bhavatanha and vibhavatanha, a lot of the what we read in the suttas, or what we hear in talks and in reading many Dhamma books, the kind of instruction that's given, cultivate this, let go of that, get rid of this, or this is an obstacle, it should be abandoned, or this is a wholesome quality, it should be developed. So much of that, should do this, shouldn't do that, it can be picked up and say influenced by the desire to become, the desire to get rid of, and those influences of bhavatanha, vibhavatanha can be totally invisible. Completely, the mind can be completely unaware of that, and so that it's really, I would say, so crucial, essential to be looking at that and say, where's this motivation coming from? What's behind this? How much conceit and self-view is coming into this? And I think in one of the readings a couple of sessions ago, that recognizing that, that there is that, I really want to become enlightened, I really want to be an arahant, that would be great. If there is a conceiving thought, if that is there's the awareness, that the puru, that knowing that, oh look, there's a conceit, there's the, I really would like to be an arahant thought. And that in that moment, that's known for what it is. So even if those sort of conceited or self-based attitudes arise, they're known for what they are, and that there's that sort of, I know you, Mara, I know what this is, that even though those voices might be sort of coming into being, there's that readiness to recognize, there's that, I really wish I could get over this bad habit. That it's not, here's the mind saying, this is mine, there's a me who is the owner of this bad habit. Right there is a sense of owning that arises, passes away, so that then the things are really being kept in their true context, they're seen in their true light, as it were. Yes, there's a question at the back. If you could wait for a microphone.
Hi, I'm a little bit confused with, you were saying that a sign of stream entry is recollection, and for me, I think I've got it wrong, because I thought what I should be doing was sort of letting go of conversations, letting go of where I put my hat, letting go of attachment to possessions, attachment to conversations, and getting rid of all of that, so I don't recall what happened. And then you said, "Oh no, the recollection's a sign of good," and I've spent the last few years trying to forget everything.
That's a good question. Well, the word sati it's related in terms of its origin, its etymology, is related to the word for memory. And so the Sanskrit smrti is literally also means remembering. And so there is quite a lot of association with the act of remembering, with the quality of mindfulness. It's not encouraging a hanging on to what's happened in the past and reiterating, sort of replaying the past. There's as you're describing, there's an encouragement to not dwell on that or to let go of it. But if you're paying attention in the present, then if you do need to remember where you've left your hat or your shoes, then the information can be there. So it's because the Buddha also gives encouragement not to dwell upon the past and not to create ideas about the future, but to say what he calls the ideal solitude, or the most so beneficial abiding is being awake to the present moment. So it's not dwelling on the past or reiterating the past, but a natural, say, effect, if there is mindfulness, is often it is easier to recall because you've been paying attention to what you're doing when you were doing it, rather than being distracted and say, did I have my hat when I came? I can't remember. It's like you would have remembered, okay, you put your hat on when you left the vihara or whatever. So that the memory is there if you need it, but the mind isn't dwelling on that or replaying the past, or either in terms of nostalgia or regret, or just ruminating, regurgitating events. It's like it can draw upon that memory if it's needed, and if it's not needed, then the mind doesn't conjure that up. But also, it can be that you can be completely mindful and also forget things. It's not like to be, if you're really mindful, you'd have perfect recall. That's not always that's not what's implied. But it's a natural function of mindfulness is that there's the ability to recall if you need to. Generally, I hope that makes things clearer.
Yes, thank you.
What's your name, by the way?
Alex.
Alan.
Alex.
Alex. Okay. Maureen. Yeah. Can you wait for a microphone? Come and get a microphone. Yeah. Thank you.
So Ajahn, I was reflecting on something that you had said maybe 3 or 4 days ago at one of these sessions. It was in response to a question William had about how to deal with someone, or deal in a conflictual situation, or deal with a relationship that's conflictual. And
conflictual, isn't it?
Conflictual, yeah, a conflict. You had said, I think your words were, about your practice was, I try not to create people. Mm-hmm. So I was reflecting on that, and I realized that's actually quite a profound practice, if I'm understanding what you were meaning by it. But I wanted to see if you could actually describe what that statement means as a practice to you, or how you practice not creating people.
Yeah, good question. It's in a way a lot to do with being mindful of patterns of thinking, so that if, say for example, if you have a subject that's you've been discussing with someone, and they have an opinion that you're uncomfortable with, and you say, "Oh dear, I don't think that's a very good idea." Or where's that going to? If that person acts on that opinion, or they've got a particular fixed view, or where's that going to go, or what's going to be the result of that? And so then, and that can be like in your family or work situation, or in monastery or wherever. So you have a memory of that of a conversation or some particular issue. So then your mind remembers what was said, or you're remembering the person, and then you in that memory, and then you're imagining, okay, well, if she does this, then I should say that, or I really hope that he doesn't do this, or if he does that, then I should have to do that, and oh, how's that going to work out? And so you're paying attention to that flow of thought, and it might just be like a couple of seconds, just boop, popping into being, and it's recognized very quickly. And so, or it might be that the mind goes into a whole sort of script writing and anxious kind of scenario. But whether it's short or long, and how much the mind gets absorbed into it, and the practice of not creating people would be to see that happening. To say, oh, I'm creating Maureen, or I'm creating Narindo, or Anagarika Philippe, and that my mind is creating that person, and that and then naming that that's what's been going on. Oh, I'm creating Maureen. I'm creating Tanarindo, and then because I've been using that as a practice, or something that I've used over many years, then there's a sort of well-worn track, if you like. So, okay, the mind is creating that person. Yeah, who knows what they're thinking? Or yes, well, that's that particular enthusiasm of theirs, or that thing that they're upset about. That's only one part of who and what they are. That's not the whole picture. Let go. So the degree to which one is to develop that capacity to recognize that sort of giving things solidity and substantiality, and the ability to let go, then that will condition of how long that will stick around, or whether it'll just be, okay, you let go of it 1 second, and the next second they're there again, and the mind is, yeah, but what about this and what about that? So for myself, because I've done that quite a lot, I find that just by bringing that to mind and recognizing, oh, I'm creating Maureen, I'm creating Narindo, Anagarika, Philippe, and that's what the mind is doing. That can't be the whole story, or yes, but that isn't everything about them, and then it tends to drop things. If it's some very emotionally loaded issue, or something that I've got to make input into, that I've got a personal responsibility, I have to make a decision or give some direction with something, then it'll tend to pop up, or some other aspect will say, oh, but what about this part of it? Or, but what I'd really like is that instead. And then just catching that in a similar way, that, oh, I'm creating myself and how I should be and what I should do. The mind is creating a me who should do that. Let that go. And so it's one of those cumulative practices. The more you do it, the easier it is to do. And then also the aspect of say that you've got a responsibility. Say you've got to work in the kitchen with someone, and you've had an argument with them. You think, oh, what's it going to be like working with so and so tomorrow? That's going to be really a problem. And so that then, if you see the mind creating that person, or creating yourself, oh, what am I going to do with that person? How am I going to be? How are they going to be? You recognize that, you let that go. And then if you work with that, then when you're in that situation, you're there together with them in the kitchen the next day, and then you recognize, oh, this is so much easier, having not created that person. Or there's this, what I thought was going to be an issue isn't here at all, and there's this other aspect of it which is something I didn't envision at all. Aha. And so then seeing how, when you don't create somebody and you don't create yourself, that there's, I would say almost invariably, situations are far easier and far more comfortable to work with than when you've been carrying around how you want to be, or how you think you are and how you think they are. So seeing the good result of not creating somebody is also, really very, very beneficial. Look at that. So in a way, that's sort of positive reinforcement, to use a Skinnerian language. It's you're reinforcing that behavior, like, oh, look, having not created that person or not created myself, then there's this really pleasant, beneficial result. Aha, notice this. Let that in. And I feel that that's an important part of it. It's not just applying the method, but seeing what the result of the method is. And that so at the very root of it, it's keeping track of your thought processes and noticing when the mind is doing that, and then recognizing that that is something that the mind is doing. It is generating that person. It's not like that person is there and then you are having a valid reading about how they actually are. As Luang Por was saying in this talk, it's like when you think about someone who's passed away and you remember them, you conceive of them as being alive, but that very idea of the person is a perception. So they say, Maureen isn't here. This is my mind thinking Maureen. I mean, Maureen is here, but yeah, if you weren't, so that like I can think Luang Por Sumedho. He's not here in the temple, and so when I think Luang Por Sumedho, that is a thought in my mind. It's not Luang Por Sumedho. It's a thought, and when we've invested a lot of time and energy in thinking and made the conceptual realm very solid and real, and often in the West in particular, we are very heavily conditioned to the thought realm, we forget that the idea of Luang Por Sumedho is not the same as Luang Por Sumedho. The idea of a person is the person. We reify our thoughts, our concepts. We give them a lot of energy in life. We make our conceptual world incredibly solid and real. And one of the aspects of this kind of practice that I felt so helpful over the years is that that recognition. Oh, the idea of Maureen, or the idea of Ajahn Chandasiri, the idea of Luang Por Sumedho, that's not the person. That's a mental image. That's an idea in my mind in this moment, and that you're not pretending that you've dreamed that other entity into existence, but in this moment, it's just the idea of that person, and they are not here. In this moment, it's just this. And so when I would find myself particularly stirred up, like there's some clash with somebody, or there's some really difficult meeting is scheduled to happen, I've got to talk to so-and-so tomorrow, and there's a emotional charge around it, then often, and so just letting it go is having to be done over and over again. I would often just say to myself, he's not here. This is that person is not here. This is an idea in your mind. Yes, that you might have to do this and say that, and it might be problematic. But right now, he's not here. And then there's the actuality of that is like, oh, right. In that moment, the mind is keeping it in perspective. And there's no self-deception. It's not like you're sort of pretending anything. It's like, no, like Luang Por Sumedho is not here. It's just an idea. It's just a mental formation in this moment. That's the actuality. So that you're bringing, you're seeing things really with the eye of Dhamma. You're seeing things as they truly are. This is a mental event. It's taking place now, and so I've also found that as a helpful way of keeping it in perspective. So I hope that's useful. You could write a whole book about it. How not to create people. Any other thoughts, reflections? It's gone past 7 o'clock already. Yes, William, I was in a silent agreement to no more. Very good. Okay, I think we can finish things there for today.